How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the first episode of the new year of the Innings Podcast with your host, Alec Pecado. On today's show, we will be going over my NL. We will be talking about the National League on today's podcast, from giving you the moves teams in the NL still need to make and giving you sleeper teams at the end of the program. Let's get started here and first talk about the NL East. And we're going to start with the Mets. And the Mets, I believe, need to make one more move for. No, that's not what I needed right there. Sorry about that. The one of the moves the Mets need to make is I think they need to sign one more either starting pitcher or reliever. Because I don't think their bullpen. I like Edwin Diaz at the end of the game, but I don't think their bullpen is completely solidified. Because if we saw last year what happened with the Mets, they had some glaring issues at the end of games, especially when Edwin Diaz was hurt for a little while. And they need somebody, if Edwin Diaz either struggles or he gets hurt again, they need somebody else that is capable of coming in the ninth inning and getting the final 3 outs of a game. And I don't see anybody in their bullpen right now that is capable of doing that. The second thing the Mets need to do, and this should be the first thing David Stearns does, is they need to re-sign Pete Alonso. Do not let Pete Alonso go somewhere else, because there is rumors out there that there's a certain number of teams interested in Pete Alonso. And one of them is very interesting. It's the Rays, which I'll get into that in another episode. And the other thing the Mets need to do for me is they need to add more depth pitching wise to either the rotation or the bullpen, because we saw how many injuries they had pitching wise last year and how it almost cost them in the playoffs and during the regular season. So, with that being said, they do need to go out and I think get more depth pitching wise. We get to the Braves. And Braves fans, I want your opinion on this. You can either, as you see in the bottom of the screen, you can either tweet me on Twitter at AlexCFB, hashtag 9innings, which is the name of the podcast, with your questions during the show, or you could text the number that is at the bottom of the screen as well and text your questions in. But I think the first thing the Braves need to do is they need to sign a starting pitcher. They lost Charlie Morton. They lost Max Fried. And on top of that, they will be without Spencer Strider for roughly half the season, which is a scary predicament for them because, I mean, Spencer Schwellenbach did step up. We don't know what AJ Smith-Shawver is capable of because he was up and down between the minors. Dylan Dodd, we don't know. We don't know we know who some of the rotation is going to be, but we don't know. Like, the unknowns are AJ Smith-Shawver, Dylan Dodd, and Hurston Waldrop. Maybe they go out and trade for a Framber Valdez or somebody else. The other thing the Braves need to do, and Braves fans, tell me how you feel about this. I think y'all are going to be fine. You just need to hang around the top of the NL East until you get both Ronald Acuna and Spencer Strider back, which I think both of them might come back at the same time or a little bit earlier. Either All-Star break or right before the All-Star break, so they have the entire second half of the season. And that is... And I'm even going to say this. There's one other thing I would do if I was the Braves. I would trade for a closer because I like Raisel Iglesias, but I don't think Iglesias has the long-term stability to be a closer. I think eventually he's going to fall off and end up being a 7th or 8th inning guy. So you need somebody that can get saves at the end of a game. And like I said, I don't think that's going to be Raisel Iglesias. Now we get to the Phillies. And the first order of business for the Phillies is extending the guy you just traded for and Jesus Luzardo. Yes, that is not a prediction I had earlier in the offseason, was Jesus Luzardo getting moved within the NL East to the Phillies. I did not think that was going to, I thought he was going to get traded. I didn't think it was going to be an intra-division trade, but it was. And like I just said, I think the Phillies need to extend him right now. Well, he's probably not going to ask for a lot of money. If he has a good season, and he is arbitration eligible the next couple years, but I think if he has a good season, that he is going to ask for a lot of money and an extension. And then the second thing the Philadelphia Phillies need to do is, I like their outfield, but I think they need to go after maybe an Anthony Santander, bring back Austin Hayes, sign an outfielder. Because, like I said, I do like Johan Rojas, I do like Brandon Marsh, I do like Nick Castellanos, but Castellanos is the odd one of the bunch. He's getting up there, he's a little bit older, and he's over 30 years old, and I don't think Castellanos is going to be around a lot longer for the Phillies. I think if they can get rid of him and get younger in the outfield, they won't hesitate to, because they've got a prospect that I think might be called up this year, and that is Justin Crawford. I think that Justin Crawford does get called up by the Phillies at some point this year. The Marlins are next. Marlins need to continue, and Marlins fans, I want to know your opinion. Everybody's feedback and opinion is welcome. Marlins fans, I think you need to continue to trade off your older veterans and recoup prospects. And here is the reason I say that. If you keep trading veterans, what you're doing is not only are you bringing prospects in, but you're rebuilding up your farm system, which, I'm sorry, was not one of the better farm systems in the MLB. So by trading off guys that aren't in your long-term plans, like you did with Luzardo, like you did with Jake Berger, you're getting back prospects or people or guys that can be on your opening day roster. And in exchange, you're giving up veterans that probably would leave the team after the season. And the other thing the Marlins need to do is sign their young players to long-term contracts. I'm looking at a I'm looking at Sandy Alcantara doesn't count. I'm looking at Braxton Garrett. I'm looking at Max Meyer. I'm looking at Jake Eater whenever he gets called up. I'm looking at Dax Fulton. I'm looking at your younger guys that are either in the big leagues right now or on the cusp of being in the big leagues. You need to sign them to long-term contracts. Look at what take a page out of the Braves book. Look what the Braves did. They paid all their guys when they were younger, like Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies. And then the Nationals extend, and this is really the only thing I have for the Nationals, extend your two young superstars, and James Wood and Dylan Cruz, right now before they start asking for more money. Because once they start asking for more money, I don't think you're going to re-sign them, but you're going to have to overpay. I would pay them right now while they're young. Now we get to the NL Central. And we're going to start with the Cincinnati Reds. And I'm going to echo the same sentiment that I just did for the Nationals for the Reds. Extend Elly De La Cruz and all the young players you have. Christian Encarnacion Strand, Matt McLain. I would have said Jonathan India, but he's gone. Tyler Stevenson, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott. Extend all of them. And then this is the big one. Trade some of your prospects because your farm system is, I'm not going to say loaded, but it is quite filled with prospects that you could be willing to give up to get Luis Robert Jr. from the White Sox. Because we did see how much the Red Sox had to give up to get Crochet. It wasn't very much. Now, I do think the haul for Luis Robert's going to be a lot bigger than it was for a guy like Garrett Crochet, who's a starting pitcher. The Cubs. The one thing I have for the Cubs is you need to sign a starting pitcher, either Jack Flaherty or Roki Sasaki. And here's why. I like your rotation, but you got a one or two empty spots in the rotation. And I think filling it with Sasaki or Flaherty, and it doesn't have to be with Flaherty. It doesn't have to be, it could be a longer term deal, maybe 2 or 3 years, but give him a lot of guaranteed money that he could turn and have him after maybe year 1 or year 2 of the contract, have an opt out. So if he wants to go back into free agency, he's allowed to. And same with Sasaki. If you sign Roki Sasaki, because he's already said that he wants to go to, the Cubs, that's a big market, but it's not as big as LA. It's not as big as Boston. It's not as big as New York. If he wants to go to Chicago, have him sign with the Cubs for 2 or 3 years to get his feet under him and see how it works. Now we go to the Brewers. And there is 2 big needs for the Brewers here. 1, extend your 2 young guys in Sal Frelick and in the other young guys you have. All your young core, including Sal Frelick. Give them extensions now while they're cheap. Because like I've echoed about a couple other teams, if you wait to give these guys extensions, they're gonna want a lot of money. And the second thing for the Brewers is sign a starting pitcher. I know you're getting Brandon Woodruff back. You have Freddie Peralta. You have Freddie Peralta. You have Brandon Woodruff. You have Tobias Myers. That's a solid top three, but you need a guy for the fourth and fifth spot. And there is some guys out there like Sasaki, like Flaherty, that you could sign and potentially bring in to be a fourth or fifth starter. Next, we get to the Cardinals. Trade for the Cardinals, the biggest thing in it. I don't think this is going to happen, but they need to trade their vets. Steven Matz, Nolan Arenado, because Nolan Gorman is supposed to be the third baseman going into 2025 for the Cardinals. And right now, his role with the Cardinals is in limbo because there's talks that they might not be able to get a Nolan Arenado trade done because nobody wants to take on Arenado's contract. If somebody wanted to take on Arenado's contract, that'd be a different story. And I mean, I could still see Arenado getting traded. If he does it right now, he probably will at the deadline. And then also get prospects. Get prospects. When you trade these veterans away, try to recoup as many prospects as you can. And now we get to the last team in the NL Central, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Extend your young guys, mainly Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens, O'Neal Cruz, Henry Davis, Jared Jones, Braxton Ashcraft when he gets called up. Give them extensions now. And then also trade for a veteran pitcher. I don't know who's left out there, but trade for a vet. Whether it be, I would have said sign Charlie Martin, but Charlie Martin's gone. He signed with somebody. Trade or sign a veteran pitcher to mentor these younger guys. Maybe a Justin Verlander, maybe a Max Scherzer. Sign one of them or go out and trade for a veteran pitcher. Now we get to the NL West, and we start with the Padres. And I think, and Padres fans, you can disagree or agree with me on this. I think it is time to move on from Dylan Cease. You could get a haul back for Dylan Cease. I don't know what that looks like, but you will get a boatload of prospects back for Dylan Cease. Whether it be top 15 prospects, top 20, top 30, you will get a lot in return for Dylan Cease. And the second thing for the Padres is to sign either Hassan Kim or Roki Sasaki. Because the Padres re-sign Hassan Kim or sign Roki Sasaki. And the reason I say re-sign Hassan Kim is he's been really good for you. And he's very versatile. He could play second base. He could play third base. He could play shortstop. I would re-sign him and put him at shortstop because you don't really have a shortstop right now. Unless you're going to tell me you're going to move Manny Machado to short, which I'm sorry, I don't want to see that. And then Yu Darvish has already came out and said he wants Sasaki to come to the Padres. Sasaki's got another week. He said he was waiting till January 15th to make his decision where he's going to sign. Now we get to the Diamondbacks. And the Diamondbacks The two big things I have for them. One, let Jordan Lawler play every day. Jordan Lawler has had very little playing time in the MLB. He's had one or two call-ups, which didn't last more than a month. And I think if he wasn't hurt last year, he would have been up mid-season for the Diamondbacks. And you can move Marte's your second baseman. I don't know what the Diamondbacks have to do to get rid of Gerardo Perdomo. He is not very good hitting-wise. He's excellent defensively. That's probably the only reason that he is still on the Diamondbacks. And the second thing the Diamondbacks need to do is they need to extend Jordan Montgomery. They did just spend a lot of money on Corbin Burnes, which that came out of nowhere. I was not expecting Corbin Burnes to go to the Diamondbacks. You saw where I had him going. I had him going to Boston. The Diamondbacks were second or third on my list for Corbin Burnes. But I think they do need to extend Jordan Montgomery. We get to the Giants. Let your young guys play. Kyle Harrison, Elliot Ramos, Luis Matos, and Patrick Bailey. Because it seemed like Patrick Bailey really wasn't your number one catcher last year. You had Kirk Casale get some time behind the plate and a few other guys that were Blake Sabled, that were munching away playing time from a guy like Patrick Bailey, who is excellent defensively. And I think if he plays every day, he'll hit around 270, 275, maybe 280. And the other thing the Giants need to do, if the Mets don't want Pete Alonso, Giants, go out and sign Pete Alonso to a long-term deal. You need a first baseman. Your first baseman is not Lamont Wade, and it is not Patrick Bailey. Go out and make a move for Pete Alonso. And last but not least, the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies need to let Chase Dollander needs to make the opening day roster for the Colorado Rockies. And the Rockies, they're nowhere near contention right now. They need to let all their young players play, whether it be Dollander, whether it be Veen, Amador, let all your young guys play. Brenton Doyle. And now we get to my sleeper teams in the NL for 2025. My first sleeper team in the National League for 2025 is the Pittsburgh Pirates. I liked how the Pirates started out last year, and I thought the Pirates really had a shot at making the playoffs last year before they obviously fell off and missed the postseason. I think if all their young guys step up another notch and show what they could do, the Pirates will be a playoff team this year. Not saying they're going to go to the World Series, but they might make the playoffs as one of the three wildcard teams. Next, we've got the Chicago Cubs. And the Cubs, they did make a couple moves that were head-scratching. One, I thought that Bellinger wasn't going to get moved. I thought it was going to be Suzuki. Now, Seiya Suzuki might still get moved, but the reason I have the Cubs as a sleeper team is look at their young core. You've got Pete Crow Armstrong. You've got Kevin Alcantara. You've got veterans in Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki. You've got Jamison Tyon. You've got young pitchers like Cade Horton. And I think the Cubs, if they can stay healthy, will be a big-time surprise team this year in the National League. My third sleeper team is the Cincinnati Reds, and I know what people are going to say. They're tired of hearing that Cincinnati's a sleeper team. They are, because of all the young talent they have. And I think if all that young talent shows up and they take a step forward, they will be in the postseason next year. And my last sleeper team is the Washington Nationals. Yes, the Nationals are ahead of schedule in their rebuild, and I think within the next couple years, we will see them back in the playoffs. Maybe that is even this year with James Wood, Dylan Cruz, CJ Abrams, and then getting Cade Cavalli back. Another year of Jackson Rutledge, another year of Mackenzie Gore, another year of Jake Irvin, another, maybe at some point, Brady House. I think the Nationals might be a sneaky good sleeper team this year. And if you haven't watched any of the other podcast episodes, I highly recommend it to get you up to speed with what we talk about on this podcast or the Wrestling is Awesome podcast, which there will be not one, but 2 episodes tomorrow of. And of course, this one, and then the college football show with me by myself, and then the college football podcast with me and my co-host, Bradley, who's also my co-host for the Wrestling is Awesome podcast. And I have started something new for this channel in 2025 for all my podcasts. At the bottom of the screen, there is 2 ways to get involved in the show, and they will be sticking around for the long run. And it is, you can either, if you have a question about the show, or you have a question about wrestling, about college football, about MLB, about pro football, you could tweet it at using the hashtag of Wrestling is Awesome podcast, 9 innings, college football show, college football podcast, pro football podcast, at the Twitter handle AlexCFB. Or you could text it to the phone number that is on the bottom of the screen, and I will answer your questions throughout the show. Do we have any Twitter questions today? We do not. But yes, that is the new way to get. And if you also have questions, you can also put them in the comment section too. But like I said, if you haven't already watched one of the other podcasts on this channel, highly recommend it, as it gets you in the feel of what this channel is all about. But that's going to wrap it up today. I will see everybody tomorrow at 5:45 and 8 o'clock.